Springfield Prodigy 4¼ inch with the Skips Gunz treatment. No, I did not get the Plague comp. Maybe I will in the future, but full EGW internals, Atlas flat-faced medium trigger, recoil reduction, along with red dot in the light that I already had on it. This thing is like a 2011 should be. Let's see how she runs. Like a bat out of hell. Welcome back to Sawteeth Tactical. Today, I'm going to do a review on my current favorite gun. This is my Springfield Prodigy 4¼ inch, but now with the Skips Gunz custom upgrades. I did put out a video last week about exactly this, but that was before I had gotten it to the range. I'd been out of town last weekend and I just had to put out a video about it because I was pretty excited about it. Well, I finally got to shoot it yesterday, so we're going to talk about how it performed, how everything feels, if it's still reliable or not. We're going to go into all that today. Make sure you're subscribed, and let's check out the SGZ Prodigy. I love the Springfield Prodigy, and I always knew it'd be a great gun for customization, upgrades, and Skips Gunz did those upgrades for me. I'm extremely happy with it. Oh, baby. So for a little bit of backstory, I have come to absolutely love this Springfield Prodigy. When these first came out, there was a lot of controversy surrounding them. To me, I was extremely excited that it seemed like there was a 2011 on the market that was actually affordable. It's a production gun, not a hand-fit gun, and I understood that, having owned multiple Springfield Armory 1911s in the past and having had mostly very good experiences with them. Now, this one did have some issues, but I've worked out those kinks. Now it's 100% reliable and it's a great shooting pistol. So I was a little bit disappointed when I saw the problems people were having with them, and a whole cottage industry popped up around this gun in order for people to send them to different gunsmiths to basically get them fixed. Well, I waited a little bit until it seemed like Springfield had worked out the issues on them, and then I bought mine, and I guess I got lucky. I don't know. I think most of them after a certain point have been perfectly reliable from the research that I've done. Well, mine was one of those. I put 1,000 rounds through it before I did any modifications or upgrades to it. Now, I did add a light and a red dot, obviously, because, of course, put a light and a red dot on everything that I can. Light, you need to be able to positively identify things in the dark. It is dark half the time on this planet. And the added muzzle weight helps to, control recoil a little bit. And a red dot, of course, because you can be threat focused, it just makes it quicker to get on target. I've got videos going into why I believe in red dots on pistols. That's not what this video is about. Those are the only two things I did to it. And I documented every round for the first 1,000 rounds that I put through this gun, did a 1,000 round review, and then I sent it off to Skips Gunz to get some new parts put in it. Was there anything wrong with the parts that I had in the gun? No, the gun worked great. It was perfectly reliable. The trigger was absolutely acceptable. It was 3.8 to 4 pounds, and it was a 1911 trigger. It was definitely decent. But there's always room for improvement, right? I haven't re-zeroed my optic yet after putting it back on. Let's see if it's still close. Not bad, not bad. 2011s are generally fairly high-end guns. And there's certain characteristics that they're supposed to have. One of them is supposed to be a very, very good single action trigger. Another is supposed to just be the smooth slide to frame fit, smooth action, things like that. And I felt like this Prodigy, for the most part, had those characteristics. But again, like I said, there was room for improvement. And I did the math on it before I even bought the thing because I knew I was going to upgrade it. I upgrade all my guns. And I usually do all that work myself. I sent this one off to Skip because this is what he does. He works on 2011s and I wanted to make sure it was done right. I did a lot of research beforehand. Sear spring tuning, fitting of the parts was something that I just didn't want to deal with on this first one. I'm sure it's something that I will learn to do in the future because I believe I will be getting into more 2011s in the future. But I think that this was a great way to get into 2011s. I was able to get into this gun for around $1,300. Put a light and an optic on it, I'm still less than $2,000. And then with the $400 I spent sending it to Skip to get these parts upgraded, I'm still at less than $2,500 for a 2011 that is very reliable, has a great trigger, great internal parts, really light recoil spring, and it just feels really good, all for less than $2,500, which would be basically the base price to get a Staccato P with an optic cut. We can go for some even greater distance here. Man, this thing is a fun gun to shoot. So these are the parts that I replaced. There's the mainspring, the firing pin, the trigger assembly, recoil spring, sear spring, the hammer, the sear, the disconnector. Basically all of the internal parts that everybody talks about are MIM, or metal injection molded. Now, lots of your guns have metal injection molded parts. It's not something I was super concerned about. The only real thing about them is that they might not last as long as actual billet, machined steel parts. But, of course, those machined parts are better. And EGW makes a great internal parts kit for this Springfield Prodigy. So after doing a lot of research, deciding what I felt like was worth spending my money on right now to get a very high quality, well-running gun that felt really good, without all of the extra bells and whistles, that's what I did. So I didn't get the plague comp or port. I didn't get the tri-top slide. I didn't get a lot of things. I didn't get my safeties done, which I think I probably should have. But I got the parts that I felt like really mattered as far as the functioning parts of the gun. So again, I just listed off exactly what got replaced. It has a lighter recoil spring in here with a buffer on it, and you can feel the difference. I know I talked about this in the first video about it. I never had much of an issue with mine catching on the disconnector and it causing any kind of reliability problem, but you could feel it catching on that trying to go back into battery. You definitely don't feel that anymore. It is like it's on ball bearings. It is just super smooth. The trigger, this trigger is incredible. Check out a little bit of take up, and that's the brake. Reset, brake, and it's pulling at about 2.5 pounds. I've got a trigger pull gauge. I've measured it a number of times, 2.4 to 2.6 pounds. Here, we'll do it once right here just to prove that. Oops. Try that again. £2.6 pounds. I'm extremely happy with the way this trigger feels. Plus, I'm really happy with the way it looks. Silver flat-faced Atlas trigger kind of matches the stainless steel of the barrel and the color of the hammer there. I do think I probably should have gotten some stainless or silver safeties as well. Probably something I will do in the future. So we tried a little bit of distance. Now I want to try with this new trigger and tuned sear spring and everything. Let's see how fast she does up a little closer. So how does the gun run? Took it out to the range for the first time, put 120 rounds through it, and it was perfect. Of course, it was perfectly reliable. It ran all 120 rounds without a hiccup, no issues whatsoever, which I was a little bit concerned about with the lightened recoil spring, if it was still going to be as reliable. And of course it is, because Skip knows what the heck he's doing. I shot it up close, very fast, to see how quickly I could run this trigger. And I'm sure I'll get even faster with it the more I get used to it. But it did it great. And it stayed on target, returned to target very well. With the light and recoil spring, it does seem to be a little more flat shooting. And it was already a relatively soft shooting gun. But I can only imagine how good it would be with a comp or porting. Because even without it, this thing it's just a joy to shoot. It really is. And then I took it back to some distances. Now, I didn't go back to like 100 yards today, but 30, 35, 40 yards. I didn't actually measure it, but just from what I could tell the distances were. And I was able to be mostly pretty accurate with it. And that was without even re-zeroing my optic. I just remounted it. Put some Vibratite on the optic plate screws because I have had an issue with those coming loose. Luckily, it doesn't seem like it did with these 120 rounds. So maybe I've finally got that issue fixed. Tried Vibratite instead of Loctite this time. But I was hitting steel most of the time from a pretty decent distance back, especially for shooting handgun. Not a problem. The thing shot really, really well. This gun just induces confidence as a shooter. It makes me feel like a better shooter than I am because I'm generally able to shoot this gun better than I can shoot like a Glock or a striker fired gun. It's the same thing I've always said about 1911s in general, but when you have one with a trigger like this and, 20, 26 round capacity, it really, really makes it a pleasurable gun to shoot. This Prodigy is so much fun to shoot. Go through ammo very fast. This makes 120 rounds extremely quickly today. Sure is fun though. So getting this back is proof that SGZ skips guns, that he knows what he is talking about. A lot of people were trying to overspring these guns to make them reliable with the first ones that came out that had issues. And he actually, springs them lighter. It's got a lighter recoil spring, lighter mainspring, which makes for a lighter hammer. It's much easier to cock this hammer now. And that, of course, makes for less resistance against the slide reciprocating because the slide has to push that hammer back when it reciprocates. So all of that makes for just a smoother, flatter shooting gun, which is really, really nice. And it just gives you a little bit more pride and ownership. It feels like a 2011 should feel. It looks just a little bit custom with the trigger and hammer, but it's kind of a sleeper where most of the changes are internal and are things that can't be seen. I don't have a giant mag well on it or a big gas pedal on the side or any of those things that a lot of custom 2011s have. Maybe I will in the future. What does the future hold for this gun? Well, of course, Skip was right, and there are a few things that he recommended that I do think that I will end up doing. And of course, I kind of regret not just having done when I had the gun at his shop in the first place. He did recommend a different set of safeties, and I do think I'll do that. So this right here is a Springfield 1911, and the safety on it is perfect. safety on the Prodigy is not, unfortunately. It goes into safe just fine. It works just as it should, but it's got a little bit of play when you put it on fire. And the more that I use it, turn it on and off, this side actually walks out a little bit, and I have to like press them back in together, which for a gun that I feel is relatively high end at this point is not something that I should have to deal with. So I will be installing a set of safeties at some point. I haven't decided which ones yet, whether I get staccato safeties, EGW safeties, Atlas safeties. I'm going to do a little bit of research, find out what I want, and probably get something that matches the trigger and the hammer and the barrel, of course. That I do think I can do myself, and it'll be a good learning experience to take this thing apart. The other thing that I'll probably do, again, something that he recommended, is the Atlas toolless guide rod. I didn't really have a problem with the two-piece full-length guide rod in this gun. You know, it's something you only deal with when you take it apart to clean it anyway. But being that it is a 2011 with relatively tight tolerances, I do like to take this apart, clean it, and lube it pretty much after each time I go out and shoot it. So it is something I have to deal with. And I noticed that with the lighter recoil spring that's in it now, it's actually harder to hold the whole thing together when you go put the two-piece guide rod back together. So, of course, Skip was right, and I probably will end up replacing both the guide rod and the safeties at some point in the future anyway, and I will update you guys when that happens. To sum it all up, I'm very, very happy with this gun. I highly recommend the Springfield Prodigy, at least this 4 1/4 inch version. I know that it seems like people have had more issues with the 5-inch version, although that does seem to be the one that everyone is porting and comping and stuff, because you do have a little bit more room up here to do things like that. But I highly recommend this gun. I do think that they're very reliable at this point, and I highly recommend SGZ, Skip's Gunz. This is his sticker, his card right here. He does awesome work. If, like me, and I'm pretty competent and generally confident when it comes to working on my own guns, I just didn't want to screw this up, and so I am perfectly fine with sending it off to someone that absolutely knows what they're doing. And I want to, support a fellow creator on YouTube. I've been watching Skip's channel for quite a while. I really like what he does. And he's motivated me to really want to get into the 2011 thing more. Of course, that is an expensive hobby to get into, but I mean, I've spent so much money on guns, and at this point, this is the only pistol I have that I really want to shoot all the time. And so it kind of makes sense to me to get into more pistols similar to this. And this is about as low end as it gets when it comes to a 2011. Is this Springfield Prodigy. So I can really only imagine how good it actually can get. We might try one of the Bull Armory guns on this channel at some point in the future. Staccato, hopefully, maybe a Stealth Arms Platypus. But I would really like to get into, Atlas, Infinity, just run some of these guns and see what they're all about. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please leave me a like, a comment, a share. Please subscribe to Sawtooth Tactical. Let me know what your experience with the Prodigy or with SGZ has been. I reply to every comment, and I love interacting with you guys. And from Sawtooth Tactical, stay strapped or get clapped. And believe and achieve.